Hello and welcome to the Northern Nine podcast. We're going to be talking to Róisín El Cherif this week, the Irish-Palestinian singer, musician and filmmaker. In the last 18 months, of course, Róisín has been very active and outspoken about and speaking up for the people of Palestine and Gaza with the genocide happening against them. And her show upcoming next week at the Button Factory in Dublin on April 30th, Wednesday, April 30th, is a show that kind of encapsulates a lot of what she's been doing for the last 18 months. Róisín has been releasing music since 2016, and in the last 2 years, especially the last 18 months, has really leaned into her Arabic heritage. She released a version of Shula Roon, a traditional Irish ballad sung in Irish and English traditionally, but added an Arabic verse and performed it on Tommy Tiernan as well. The song raises funds for Gaza. And she said at the time about that song, what links these two cultures, Arabic and Irish, is grief and perseverance. I find great solace in the traditional music of both lands, and I felt easy for me to blend and combine them. Now, Róisín has really encapsulated the both sides of her upbringing, the Irish and Palestinian sides in recent months. And on the show next week on April 30th at the Button Factory, it's kind of a return of the Fringe show she did last year. There will be a blend of music, poetry and film visuals, the visuals coming from Palestinian films and documentaries that we'll talk about in our chat with Róisín. We also talk about keening and how keening is kind of returning as suddenly in young Irish musicians as a kind of a touchstone, and maybe it's a reflection of what's happening in the world, because obviously we're living in a dark time at the moment and there's lots of horrible things happening, none more than what's happening to the people of Palestine. And our chat comes a few days after Kneecap played the second weekend of Coachella, where again they broadcast and shouted out pro-Palestinian messages, as they always do on stage at all their shows. During Kneecap show, the screen behind the band said, "Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. It has been enabled by the US government to arm and fund Israel despite their war crimes. Fuck Israel and free Palestine." Now, this won't be a surprise to anyone who's been following Kneecap or even vaguely aware of them, because they do this at literally every show and are shouting out Palestine, free Palestine, everywhere they go. So the organisers, Golden Voice, said they were somehow blindsided by this, even though they let them perform a second week. You may remember the first week, apparently these messages did not show on the screen. They weren't the only band or artist at Coachella to speak up for Palestine. Green Day and Nicholas Jarre were just two others. And most recently, Sharon Osbourne and Fox News were criticising Kneecap for doing this. Sharon Osbourne equating what they were doing with a support for Hamas, a really nuanced take there, Sharon. And in response, Kneecap said to Rolling Stone, "It's worth reading because you see how ideologically different Sharon Osbourne is in terms of where she's coming from and just equating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism." And they responded to Rolling Stone this week and said, "Her rant has so many holes in it that it hardly warrants a reply, but she should listen to War Pigs," that was written by Black Sabbath, her husband. So absolutely. Macara also said that they've spoken about Palestine at every single gig since the band's formation, long before October 2023, as the oppression and brutal occupation of Palestine has been ongoing for 77 years. "We believe we have an obligation to use our platform when we can to raise the issue of Palestine. It was important for us to speak out at Coachella, as the USA is the main funder and supplier of weapons into Israel as they commit genocide in Gaza. As I said from the stage, the US government could stop the genocide tomorrow. It's important that young Americans hear and know it." So part of our chat with Róisín is, she has talked about, how draining and exhausting it is to constantly speak up and just assert your right to exist, which is something the Palestinian people have not been given the right to over the years, and many, many years now we're talking about. So some of the chat touches on that, but also we'll talk a lot about her music and her influences. I think it's a really nice chat. The show happens April 30th, Wednesday, April 30th. She's promising Arabic folk songs as well as absolute witch anthems and much, much more. And I think it's a really interesting, here's somebody who, in a way, like a few weeks ago, we talked to Moving Still, the Arabic-Irish producer who has embraced that heritage and brought it together with his Irish heritage and bringing it into dance music. what Róisín is doing is very much channeling the folk, Irish folk and Arabic folk together and bringing kind of new things to it. And so let's chat to Róisín El Cherif and listen to her song, her version of Shul Arun. So Róisín, nice to meet you. Nice to chat to you properly. Many people will know for the last 18 months you've been advocating for the people of Palestine and Gaza, and you've spoken out so much about the injustice and the genocide happening. And I think, I want to start by just talking a little bit about, what's happening now in terms of art and how people are responding. Obviously, in the last week, we've seen the likes of Kneecap at Coachella and the reactions to it. And it shows that maybe in advance of this chat, you were saying, you don't know how much there is left to say, but maybe stuff like this shows there are things left to say, especially in America, where, artists can, kind of say things that can feel like they can make a change and make people think a bit more. Obviously, being Irish and coming from Ireland, we have shown quite a lot of solidarity in terms of its people, maybe not in its government. So how are you feeling about the kind of situation at the moment in terms of using your art to speak up for what's going on? Because obviously a lot of the show is kind of a celebration as well. Because I want to remain positive as much as possible, where we can.
Totally. I suppose with this week we've seen Kneecap's amazing performance at Coachella, and the fact that artists have a lot of sway when they use their platforms and when they use their influence to kind of, I suppose, tell the other narrative. When the genocide in Gaza started happening, it was my first time, I suppose, singing Arabic to an Irish audience for me. I hadn't actually sung. I'd been making music for a couple of years, self-releasing, all kind of, I suppose, pop indie tunes, but I hadn't actually explored my Arabic heritage side, because I also didn't know that it would be celebrated, or that I wanted to definitely explore that side of me, but the moment it was something that might happen in the future. But I suppose, with the immediate horror happening in Palestine, I felt the need to almost shine a light on that part of the world that I think is incredibly misunderstood, and their narrative and their culture, their language, their, it's not mainstream over here. And I just felt that, they're so rich in culture, and we're only fed a very kind of like a very small-minded view of what that part of the world is, because technically we're not really listening to the people over there. We are absolutely divided by language. Their main language is Arabic. So I suppose I kind of wanted to shine a light there and to show that. I suppose I just wanted to sing in Arabic, and I wanted to kind of humanize them, because I've always been kind of amazed at how Arabic culture and Palestinians were so dehumanized. Now, absolutely, you're right. Not so much in Ireland, because we have a shared history and there's a shared understanding. But definitely in other parts of Europe and America, absolutely, you can't be Palestinian there without having to explain that you are not a terrorist. Like, they're blamed for their own suffering, and it was imposed on them. And it was just so fundamentally wrong. And so to kind of humanize the Palestinians and to humanize the Arabic world, I just started singing in Arabic. They weren't my songs. They were songs I loved and I was listening to, and they were very poignant and deep, meaningful songs. And I suppose I found great purpose in trying to bring my two communities together, my Irish side and my Palestinian Arabic side, because in my view, I am both, and I love both. I accept both, and I just wanted everybody to see the other side. And for a while, I think. For a lot of people that I was singing around when I was singing in Ireland, like a lot of them had never even heard Arabic, They'd never heard it being spoken beautifully, or they'd never heard it being sung, or, being moved by it. They'd only heard, I suppose, American propaganda, Arabic and American propaganda films where, the Arab man is the terrorist, and the American soldier or the British soldier who has invaded is gone in to save the day. We're fighting such unbelievable racism in media and in arts that is just almost like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And it's not, it's a big lie. I wanted people to see that the beauty of that place, and the fact that, they haven't been even given a chance to be listened to.
Yeah.
I
mean, so in terms of what we do here and talking to artists, like we've had Moving Still on recently, Irish Arabic producer, talking about his heritage, and what he does is bring the Arabic side of his heritage together with his dance music influences and bringing them together. And most recently, there just seems to be a bit more celebration of Arabic culture in terms of, certainly in dance music, I've seen it a lot more. It's much more visible. Have you seen those kind of things happening elsewhere?
I mean, I think music is a good example. I'm seeing a lot of Arabic singers now kind of come out into the pop world, which is great. In terms of film, it might be a bit slower, but definitely, people are trying. But the thing about the film industry and the film world is it's a heavily propaganda based medium, and it is an incredibly Zionist industry. So, like, we could see it even at the Oscars, that No Other Land won the Oscar, and it won the Oscar, but then a lot of cinemas wouldn't distribute it, and then, like, a couple of weeks later, Hamdan, who is one of the directors of the film with Basil, he got attacked, probably revenge for making that film, by settlers in Hebron and Khalil, and the Academy wouldn't even release a statement. They just downplayed, and that's the gist about, we're fighting to be heard, but also it's not a fair foundation, or it's not a fair medium, because even the mediums are actually controlled, and even, I suppose, the narrative is controlled. But I definitely am seeing a change, a change in representation all over. People are trying to right a lot of wrongs, and put like indigenous voices first, and like, I suppose, let people narrate their own stories, and we can all do a bit of listening. So I am absolutely seeing that,
Yeah.
there is a change in the arts world, and I suppose that would make sense because the arts is meant to be the mediums where it's free of expression and everybody has a chance.
Yeah. You work in film sometimes as well, right? So like that is, you have
Yeah.
had both of those, it's not just from the outside looking in, you've been involved in film productions and stuff like that as well. You've made your own music videos, so you've seen the difference there. You've seen how the two contrast as well.
Yeah, totally.
Singing in Arabic, are these songs that you learned when you were young? Where did they come from, and what do they speak about for you?
Well, one of the main songs that I was singing everywhere is by Fairuz, and she is essentially the queen of, one of the main queens of the Arabic world in terms of music. She'd be kind of like, I don't even know how to describe her, but it's mainly, a lot of her music, which was just unbelievable to listen to because it's so beautiful, but it was all based around like pan-Arabic nationalism, and lots of songs about Palestine and, returning and missing. And her main song that I sing is called Zahrat al-Madain, which means flower of cities. And it is essentially a homage to Jerusalem and, how we lost Jerusalem.
ترحل كل يوم ترحل كل يوم تدور في أروقة المعابد تعانق الكنائس القديمة وتمسح الحزن عن المساجد
And I do sing that everywhere. And so she would be like timeless music. Like, she's from the 60s onwards, like a lot of like full-blown orchestras on her albums. And then the other song I was singing, which I was amazed to find, was actually a song by a Moroccan football team called Raja Kaza, Rajoui. And they like, this football team this football team has apparently its own singing department, which is amazing. And they sing a various amount of songs. Like, so the song I've been singing is basically a brotherly love tribute from Morocco to Palestine, where they basically say, we are far away, but we are with you, and we are trying our best, but we are also essentially, under the bleak hold of corruption, where the future of the Arab is quite bleak. And, I think that was for me, that really like just hit home, because I did grow up in the Middle East and in North Africa, in Morocco. And, there isn't freedom of speech in these parts of the world, like to say the truth or to is fatal, actually, And corruption is everywhere. It's in every aspect of life. And poverty is, a big part of the hold on people over there. They're more than capable. There's such potential in these parts of the world, but the chances are not there. So that song really, really hit me. And, they sing it at all these amazing football matches. It really took off all around the world. A lot of people have done covers of it. And I just wanted to do a cover of it as well because I absolutely loved the words in it. Just everything that I could see from my time growing up in the Middle East and in North Africa, where like there is such deep suffering in poverty and deep suffering in like knowing that you are not as valuable as the Western world. You don't have a passport, you don't have a number. Like when I lived in Tangier, sometimes when we would be getting the boat to Spain to kind of go on our holidays, we'd see like young boys being taken out of trying to smuggle themselves. They'd be taken out of the engines of the like there's incredible suffering in the third world. And they shouldn't be the third world. They're only the third world because they're not given a chance. It's because of corruption. It's because of stealth. And so that's, that would be, I suppose, it's not a classical song at all. It's a popular song. So I pick and choose the songs that I think I want to show. And I suppose I also want Western audiences to maybe understand,
And then you do a version of Suilrún, which is the Irish ballad as well, and you added an Arabic verse to that.
Yeah, that was great crack. Shalene, that was good fun. I mean, I've been kind of obsessed with Suilrún, the Irish English ballad, for years, because when I was 6, my parents took me to see Riverdance, and there was this amazing singer called Emer who would get onto stage, and she just looked like this. She would, absolutely, she's meant to be Erin of Ireland, and this Irish goddess and the smoke and the mist, and she's just singing this beautiful song. So I've been obsessed with that song since I was young, and then I was kind of, wouldn't it be great to write a few Arabic lyrics, which were kind of an idea put forward by my friends, Ruth Smith and Fergal Scahill. And so, yeah, it was great. In a period of such darkness, there was like this creativity with such purpose to humanize and bring us together, and also, I suppose, to reclaim heritage in both parts.
Yeah. And what are the parallels you're seeing when you're doing these songs or researching the songs to sing between, Ireland and the Arabic songs? You're like, what are the parallels for that you see?
I mean, Ireland is we have our own history here of incredible amounts of suffering and war, and we're very lucky that those battles were fought by our ancestors, and we get to live freely and we get to talk about it. But absolutely, colonization, you can see it has had an effect on this country, and it's 100%, it's recorded in our music. Like a lot of Irish trad music, yes, we have our happy jigs and reels, and but there's such deep sadness of being occupied and being mistreated and injustice. And I suppose I always loved Irish traditional music. I suppose I definitely loved the Irish English ballads a lot more, because I understood all of the words and the stories. Like one of my favorite songs, which I haven't done a cover of, but I would love to, but it's basically like 6 verses of absolute misery. But it's called Kill Kelly. And it's, I think the Clancy brothers sung it, and it's basically taken from these letters that were found in a house in America. And it's this, there's letters back and forth from a man called, basically these are letters to John from his Irish family. He obviously went and emigrated and never came home. And just the longing and the missing And, John, when will you come home? And, be careful not to work on the railroad. And back home here, there's no turf to burn and everybody's leaving. And, 30 years, 40 years go by and John's mother passes away and he didn't get to see her. And, just like, so definitely in Irish tradition and in Irish culture and the music especially, like you can understand so much of the Irishness through our traditional music is that of, pain. And I think we can honor pain. It doesn't have to be something we have to hide away from. And definitely the Irish couldn't hide away from it. It was all encompassing, It touched a lot of us. And so, yeah, I found great similarities in the music. The music really helped me.
Has music been just really an essential part of the last 18 months for you in terms of like helping you almost grieve, I guess, in a way, like considering what's going on? Like for me, that's what music does. It's like super important. It's really accesses part of yourself that maybe you can't readily do yourself sometimes.
Totally. It was a huge release. Like if I wasn't singing around or in Arabic and talking about Palestine at the gigs and trying to do, like, what would I have done? Do you know? I'm just like everybody else who's absolutely tortured watching this. And, I see so many people doing their best, trying to do what they can, only to discover that, this is by design, by very powerful entities. But I needed, if I didn't have the music, I don't know what I could have done, to do my part, essentially.
Well, one of the things you did recently was accept the award for Fontaines for the Irish Album of the Year at Choice Music Prize. And, that's another thing. You're obviously, what's going on and people are turning to you. And that must be exhausting at some point as well because, you're being asked to speak up. And like, I'm talking to you now and I'm conscious of that. I'm asking you questions about, something that maybe you don't always want to talk about, but, it's just... I think we all feel that helplessness and the kind of exhaustion against the face of it all. And on that night, you quoted the Palestinian poet Sam al-Qasim, "Enemy of the Sun," which kind of spoke to. For me, it showed a reminder that all of this stuff didn't start 2 years ago. It started way further back, and there's a huge history there, which is, in many ways, they're an amazing thing for somebody like Fontaines to do, to give that position to you to speak on their behalf, but also speak up for Palestine as well. So that is like, it was, I think it meant a lot to a lot of people, and you really rose to that occasion, I felt, and it was really like a beautiful way to almost mark this, in a way. It's an Irish Album of the Year thing. It's not... It doesn't really mean anything at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like it does, but it doesn't. I was a judge that day. I was a judge. I was partly responsible for this. So, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's like awarding a prize. It is what it is. And it's a great thing to do. But, there was I don't know, you just brought a real sense of weight to that as well. And it was really appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I really I was so honored that they asked, if they won, would you do that? I was like, oh my God, what an honor, first of all, to be, and then of course it's like, I would love to, and I know the perfect thing to show that. So Sama El-Qasim's poem "Enemy of the Sun," I've been reading that since I discovered it when someone handed it to me to be like, here's your Palestinian heritage. And I opened up the whole book or box or folder chapter of stuff I didn't know, and it really, that's one of my favorite poems in life. And it's a poem, it's art. So all of it together, I was actually incredibly honored to be asked, and then incredibly moved and happy to do it. And Fontaines have been so outwardly speaking on behalf of the Palestinians. Like, I have to say, I think Irish musicians Irish artists are like absolutely leading the way. And I'm so grateful that there's someone, you know,
Yeah.
because, you know, if you watch the news and if you thought that was the only outlet, then, you know, you'd go
Yeah.
mad because of the misinformation and lies. So yes, absolutely, artists have taken it upon themselves to try and right these wrongs and to stir the narrative back to truth, and I'm very grateful
Yeah.
for that.
So you're kind of doing that in your own way. By next week, you'll be bringing back your Fringe show to the Button Factory on Wednesday, April 30th. The show originally earned you a Fringe Award for outstanding performance of political and cultural significance. So, can you talk a bit about what we can expect from the show? You're promising some absolute witch anthems for starts.
Well, I mean, yeah, before I got like so deep in politics and like injustice, I definitely was just in my head. All I wanted to be doing was to be dressing up as a witch or the Morrigan and singing the Woman's Heart album, basically in the hills. That's so my vibe. But then, and I suppose my draw to like Irish folklore and mythology is also the kind of like spirituality and faith. And like for me, Irish mythology is great crack because the women are so powerful in it and have such a mega role. Like the matriarchy, it's kind of like a matriarchal society and world. And I'm like, God, wouldn't it be great to go back to that? So I've met with a lot of very interesting people in the Irish landscape who, like yesterday, I met a woman called Róisín Lennon who told me, you know, I work for the Cailleach. And the Cailleach is essentially, I mean, witch is such a bland word compared to the Cailleach, who is, you know, the divine crone, or essentially, or the divine hag. And then she kind of turns to me and she's like, you also work for her, I can see it. And I was like, oh, great. Like I obviously needed someone to tell me that's what it is. And then the more I explained to her about my show as well, she's like, yeah. So I'm delving deeper into kind of my like the Irish world of folklore and, you know, where we come from. And so myself and my band of Cailleachs, you know, I think in the email I said to you, I didn't even use the word Cailleach, I used the word banshees. And the banshees essentially are like these wailing women. And I've basically been told a lot of times that my music is like just super waily and super painful. And I was like, that's totally great. That's what I am. So we're just going to emphasize the keening and the I suppose like there's been so much death, but we can grieve, and like you said, like a celebration of life, and honor it and not be afraid of it. And so I'm bringing that to the stage, and, you know, trying to kind of unite, I suppose, the old gods and the new gods and mythology and the different realms of existence. And, you know, we can be so many things.
Yeah, there's been such an interest or resurgence, or maybe it's just a coincidence, but in keening itself in music in Ireland recently. Obviously, Roche explored that recently on Milan, the EP she did last year. And then even last week, there's electronic musician Dan McIntyre, Lola Hush. He's bringing kind of electronic rhythms and traditional sounds together. And there's one of the early recordings. I know there's not many of keening. And he uses that in one of the songs as well. So it just seems to be, I don't know if it's a response to what's happening in the world. Possibly it is. But it does seem suddenly that all of a sudden I'm coming down with keening songs everywhere. It just seems to be very prominent currently. Sorry, I think that's just an example of, like, you know, one of the things that obviously the last few years Ireland has been exploring its traditional music and culture much more, and been much prouder of that recently. And younger people much more proud of it as well. And that's great to see, because it's not something that, you know, when I was in my early 20s, people were doing. And, you know, I'm really seeing it now. Obviously, it's happening all over, and it's really, really like impressive. And it's like, in the way that you're reclaiming, you know, the heritage that you have anyway, there's a lot of other people who are doing that and being proud of it. And you straddle both in a way. So that's kind of what you're doing with the show.
Yeah, I suppose like you're dead right. Like in the last couple of years, we've gone from, everybody having this kind of face that we should always be happy to then going like, actually, it's okay to say when you're not okay. And then we're going deeper into that. And I think you're right. This is a response to like massive amounts of turmoil and grief and witnessing. And then, maybe Irish tradition is resurfacing because it has been suppressed for so long, do you
Yeah.
know? And we're finding great comfort in going back to like the origin and the source. Like keening is also in the kind of Middle Eastern world, and
Yeah.
the wailing and the kind of like honoring over bodies, and I suppose in a kind of way like death is just a part of life. It's deeply sad, but we don't have to fear it, And I suppose this kind of breaking the seal of being able to grieve and being able to be in pain. I suppose being able to say, yeah, I'm depressed out of my nut, and like grand,
Yeah.
that's also just a part of life,
But it's also a
So
natural, response to what's going on, and like like you said, the turmoil of the modern world and what's happening right now all over. It's super depressing, and it is, it would be
yeah,
hard not to be affected by it in any way, and especially now with a few years of things, and then things just seem to get worse, and you're like, well, what have we got? It's like
mm,
we need to explore our identity because it's really all we have. And when you start to see other cultural behemoths, America mostly, and others, and we live beside Brexit land and all that stuff, like people
yeah,
making crazy decisions for themselves that are closing off themselves from others. And
mm,
obviously the Irish are very much about traditionally opening ourselves, going out into the world.
mm.
So you can imagine, and I mean, it's very easy to imagine that why a lot of the Irish cultural stuff is being explored again. Well, the fact that it's also ourselves, and it's something it's really interesting, and
Yeah, like it's fascinating stuff,
yeah, it's so
you
rich.
know. Yeah, there's so much there, and you know, maybe for a long time it wasn't tapped into because people weren't allowed, or I suppose there's a shame that comes with pain, and kind of like the hierarchy of pain, or there's just and I don't think we need to be ashamed about that, do you
Yeah,
know? Like there's great beauty in pain. There's great God in pain, you know? And I suppose I'm trying to explore the different aspects of faith and the different realms. Do like I have two different families I come from. One is Muslim and one is Catholic. Lax Catholic, very lax. But still, we like there's tradition, there's culture, two different houses of God. And like I'd like to think I can belong to both, and that I can explore both and show the oneness of both. And then before I suppose like these religions, we there was already faith here, maybe not in the form of one god, but in the form of the land and nature, and the form of the Cailleach, who is essentially our grandmother, our grandmother goddess, and the queen of winter. And she's actually a seasonal goddess, in terms that her time of reign is from Samhain to Beltane. Do I say that right? Beltane? Bellatine?
oh, Beltana,
Beltane.
yeah, yeah,
But that's those are the times, the
yeah,
magic months that she reigns from, which like that's great. I'm
yeah.
into that,
So who are you bringing along for this multimedia presentation in a live show and exploration of folklore?
Who am I bringing along? Well, yeah, my special guest is Dee Armstrong, who she's just released a solo album, but a lot of people know Dee because she's been on the scene for like decades, playing with Keela, and she's a multi instrumentalist. She's one of the coolest women I've gotten to know, and I just love her music and I love her vibes. And she's doing me the great honor of coming,
Mm.
being part of the night. And I'm delighted to share a stage with her. So absolutely, there'll be some, deep, witchy magic
Mm.
music, heathen pagan music on the way. So
Yeah. And what about the you're showing some films and maybe documentary stuff as well?
so one film is an art house film made by a Lebanese woman called Heini Sarour. It's called Layla and the Wolves, and it's probably one of the best films I've ever seen. In fact, when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my God, I've just seen the film that I thought that I would try and create, but it's already exists, and it's from the 80s." So she made it in I think she made it in 1981. I'd have to double check that, but it's absolutely fascinating, and it basically covers the story of Layla, who is a Lebanese Arabic woman living in London, putting on art exhibitions to try and show, you know, London people what the Beirut civil war looked like, and just, I suppose, to show Beirut. But in it, she also goes back in time to Palestine and Lebanon before, under British mandate, essentially,
Mm.
you know, to try and explain the current like what happened to us. So there's so much from, and in that film it shows a lot of how the women helped the resistant fighters by kind of smuggling weapons, or kind of putting on distractions to distract the British so they could essentially fight, and which I just found fascinating, because you wouldn't know. There's just so much of that world that we just don't
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
Do you know? So that's Layla and the Wolves. And then the other documentary is Janine Janine by Mohammed Bakri. And it talks about the massacres of the Jenin refugee camps, which happened, is it the late 90s or the early 2000s? But it was basically like, Jenin is a place in Palestine that Israel has called often at times the hornet's nest, and it's a place where a lot of brave freedom fighters come from, and there was a massive massacre and a siege on the refugee camp that happened, essentially, like what we're seeing happening in Gaza
Mm.
now. This happened in Jenin.
Yeah.
Maybe not 18 months of genocide, but and like massacres. And so Mohammed Bekri, who's a Palestinian filmmaker and actor, made a fantastic documentary that was banned in Israel, and he's you can watch it on YouTube. It's free, and it's so people can see the story. Like the Israeli government even brought him to court to try and sue him for lies, and it's like there's nothing
Yeah.
lying about that. But yeah, so I show snippets, and in Janine, Mohammed Bekri essentially just interviews the children of the camp and the people of the camp, and it's very moving to hear children who are wise beyond their years and who have seen so much, and maybe they're only like 9, 10, and speak with such. So anyway, I just wanted to show that.
Yeah. It's a lovely way of encapsulating everything that you are and everything that you're interested in as well. So it'll be a great show.
Thank you.
What other musicians or artists are kind of inspiring you now?
I'm kind of inspired by the people around me, and the kind of, I suppose, the artists I've met that I see are also doing like a lot of activism works and like community work.
Mm.
For instance, there's an artist who I've grown very friendly with. I can't now imagine my life without her, and that's Emma O'Grady. And Emma just does so much, and everything she does it well. So she's a writer, she's an actress, and like she's helped me with my shows and in trying to steer me and connect. But also Emma does amazing community work, putting on like gatherings where musicians can come together, and where women and non-binary people can come together. And so I have to say I'm incredibly inspired by her.
Mm.
I think maybe I'm not so much looking so much anymore into the outside world, and I'm more looking into the people around who are doing things. Do you know?
Yeah.
I think maybe before I may have had, actually there's another artist that everyone knows as well is Annie Lennox. I think Annie Lennox is doing great things and has always been a voice. So yeah, it's Annie Lennox and Emma O'Grady for me.
Very nice.
I
Very nice.
think.
And will we hear some more recorded music from you this year?
Please God.
Yeah.
I've only been trying to release an album for 4 years and keep on getting sidetracked. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's like, but honestly, sometimes like 4 years can
Listen.
go by when you think I'm trying to do it all, and obviously that means nothing's happening.
Yeah. Well, when I talk to artists about, releasing albums, my only thing I can really say is that it always takes longer than you think, always.
Yeah.
And so don't have any expectations about how long it's going to take, because it can take a lot longer. So, you still got time.
Yeah.
So
but no, actually, after this gig, I'm hoping that I'll definitely be releasing a track after this gig, which I'm just going to keep tight-lipped about.
Yeah.
Because I just know myself now that there's no point in me saying, oh yeah, that's going to happen. And sure, then like that's what I said about the album like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and then something happened and things changed. So, but no, I will be releasing the album this year.
Deadlines are good though at the same time.
Yes, no, deadlines are good.
We'll check back in with you later on this year and see how you're getting on. All right, Róisín, thanks so much. Lovely to chat to you.
You too. See you later. Bye bye.
I'd sell my reel, I'd sell my only spinning wheel to buy my lover's sword of steel. Is go jay to my farning slow. Shul, shul, shul arun, shul go suck it up, shul go cute, shul gadar sag sailam. Is go jay to my farning slow. سوف أصبغ ملابسي، سوف أصبغ بالأحمر، سوف أشهد طعامي من كل الدول، حتى أهلي يتركني في نهار. Is go jay to my farning slow. قلبي تاني وما بنسى كل الأماني. Is go jay to my farning slow. Shul, shul, shul arun, shul go sakirag, shul go yul, shul gadar sag sailam. Is go jay to my farning slow. Shul, shul, shul arun, shul go sakirag, shul go cute, shul gadar sag sailam. Is go jay to my farning slow. Is go jay